I don't travel much now, but when I was younger, my family traveled all the time. All of our relatives were concentrated around the Kentucky area. My parents were the only ones who decided to move away. They were also the ones who were always expected to do all of the traveling too. Not having a lot of money, we rarely, if ever, would stay in a motel on these long drives. Instead, we very often would sleep in our cars. More often than not, we would park the car at a rest area or truck stop in order to try and get some sleep. Every once in a while, we'd do it on the side of the road, but that was a lot less common. You're more likely to get woken up by a police officer if you do that. This continued for basically all my life, even after my father passed away in my teenage years. After that, my mom, me, and my little brother would take all of the trips together, and I graduated up to the front seat. When I was 16 years old, we were taking this fairly short trip. It was really only about a 9-hour drive, I think. We left in the evening, though, so we could try and avoid rush hour traffic. Since my mom wasn't the type of person to alter her sleeping schedule at all, I knew we were not going to make the entire drive in one go. At about 1 a.m., my mom finally wasn't able to drive anymore. She told me to keep an eye out for a truck stop or a rest area. There was one right ahead of us, so we pulled into it. It was a rest area with a large back parking lot for truckers. There were a couple of semis already parked back there. We parked, but closer to the end of the lot. Nearly right away, my mom and my brother were both able to fall asleep. I wasn't like them, though. I had a really difficult time ever falling asleep in a car. If I wasn't laying down in a bed, on a couch, or even on the floor, I just could not drift off that easily. So I didn't even know if I was going to be able to sleep at all or not. As luck would have it, I wasn't able to sleep right away. We were at the far left end of the parking lot, so my window was facing the majority of the rest area. I laid my head against the window of the door and looked out over the lot. I kept staring at it, hoping I would eventually be able to fall asleep. I may have dozed off slightly once or twice, but if I did, it was really light. It seemed like I was awake the entire time. I was watching through the slightly foggy window for who knows how long. Every now and then, I'd see a person walking by, but there weren't very many at all. I watched one car pull up and park a bit away from us, but it did park near another car. A huge man got out and walked up to the car he had pulled up near. I watched as he pulled out a gun and suddenly shot through the window of that parked car. It was hard to process what I had seen at first. I just sat there in the car stunned looking at the scene. I didn't know what to do, but after what I saw, I knew I had to do something to protect my family. I tried waking my mom up. It was extremely difficult because she was a very deep sleeper, but I finally managed to get her up. She wondered immediately why I was bothering her when she was trying to get some rest. I tried explaining to her what I had just seen. I think she was still a bit sleepy-headed though, and had trouble processing what I was saying. She moved a bit and accidentally hit the horn on the steering wheel. It was only for a moment, but that was all that was needed. I looked back out the window at the attacker. To my horror, he had heard the honking, and he obviously knew it came from our car. I began begging and pleading with my mom to start the car and get the hell out of there. She kept on asking me what for, and after trying to tell her repeatedly, I finally told her to just look out the window. She did, and saw that man was quickly approaching our car. I told her I had just seen that guy attack another trucker, and now he was coming towards us. My mom quickly got the keys to the car and started it up. She pulled out of the parking lot as fast as possible and turned, ready to make it to the exit of the rest area. The attacker noticed this and began moving across the lot in an attempt to block us from getting out. Fortunately, my mom had finally gotten her wits about her and was prepared for his move. She hit the gas and swerved easily around the guy and kept going. I looked back, and yeah, he did try to chase after us for a bit, but of course he wasn't going to be able to catch up to a car on foot. My mom got the car out of the parking lot and back onto the highway in no time at all. As soon as we were able to get to a telephone, we called the police and reported what I had seen. I could describe both the guy and the truck he was driving. It didn't take very long for the police officers to find and arrest him. After that, we stopped taking those midnight naps in rest areas and sprung for cheap motels from then on instead. I spent many years as a trucker. I'm a female, which is important to this story, I suppose. One thing I learned from driving back and forth across the country for decades is that you are always going to find something weird. I can't even tell you how many times I've looked down into a car that was passing me and saw someone getting oral sex or something like that, and that's just one of the more normal things I've seen. This time, I had been up driving for a really long time. I tried to stay awake for as long as I could. I think I had been up and on the road for a full 24 hours at that point. However, even with the help of coffee, my eyes were betraying me and becoming impossible to keep open. I absolutely didn't want to have an accident and harm any innocent people, so I decided to pull over at the very next stop that I saw. I came across a rest area very shortly after. I pulled my truck into it, and then into one of the truck parking spots. I wanted to go to sleep right away, but I needed to find a bathroom first. It was a very cold night when I got out. It was pretty late out too, but that doesn't always mean anything at a rest area. There are people around at all times of the day and night really, but this time there was no one outside but me. When I went into the rest area, there was no one in there but me either. Even though I was exhausted, I knew I shouldn't fall asleep right away. There was a coffee machine, and I got myself a hot chocolate from it, so it might do a bit to help me doze off. I remember it was in one of those cups that had a poker hand on it, and I'd gotten one with a full house. Not that I was playing anyone, so it's not like it really mattered. Anyway, I took a sip from my new hot chocolate and walked back out into the cold. I was not in a really huge hurry since I had been making good time already. This meant I could sleep as long as I really needed to. I got up to my truck, then stepped up on the sidebar in order to reach the door. However, as I did so, I noticed something that caused me to pause for just a moment. I had a sleeping compartment in my truck. I noticed that the curtain blocking it off from the front of the cab was now closed. That made me stop immediately, because I had never closed that curtain before. As I was standing there looking, I noticed something far scarier. Someone was peering out from behind the curtain. They quickly pulled away when I looked into the cab. I really didn't know what to do. Part of me thought I should just throw open the door and confront whoever had gotten into my truck. I immediately felt like an ass for leaving the door unlocked as I left, but I always did that. I decided it would be a better idea to get my butt back over to the rest area and call 911 instead. I jumped down and ran over and back into the rest area. I called 911 and told them what happened, and they sent the police over. I waited in the building for a while for the police to arrive. I watched the truck out of the window, but I hadn't been able to see it the entire time I was on the phone. I was worried that whoever the person in the truck was, they might have gotten out and come after me in that short time. Fortunately for me though, if they were still in there, I would be able to see anyone if they were coming up upon the building. A car did pull in at one point, and someone came into the rest area. I knew it was not the person who had been inside my truck. I warned them someone had broken in, and the police were coming right now, so they should be careful. Finally, after a while of waiting, the police arrived. Well, it was the highway patrol technically. I showed them which truck was mine. They went to check it out and came back after a little while. The trooper told me there wasn't anyone in the cab now. However, they believed me that someone had definitely broken in. Within the past week, a female trucker had been attacked in a similar way. She had been stabbed several times, but thankfully not killed by an intruder who had snuck up into her back compartment when she had left for the rest area. It was scary, and the main thing I thought about was when I almost confronted that intruder. I think no better choice has ever been made than me not doing that. I got in my truck and drove for a while longer. The experience definitely caused me to completely wake up for a long while. I drove a long ways before I decided to stop again and sleep at that time. This time though, I made sure to lock the door. So, I had been talking to this guy online for a bit. He lived out west and I was more in the Midwest area. But after talking for a while, he invited me to come visit him for a few weeks. The only problem was, he lived in Nevada. The only time I could make the trip out, he was going to be visiting family in Colorado. So, we came up with a new idea. I would take the bus out to Colorado to see him, and we would drive together to his home in Nevada. He picked me up in a town in Colorado and drove us to Denver. He also had to go to Wyoming to visit another family member along the way. I went with him, although I found it weird he was bringing me together with him. Although we had talked a lot online and on the phone, his family had no idea who I was. They were very nice, but the whole thing was just very awkward. It wasn't until we began driving from Wyoming to Nevada that I finally began to be able to relax around him. We talked a bit and finally found comfort in person that we had experienced while we were online and over the phone. So we started getting playful and joking together and stuff. I started trying to think of something I could dare him to do that might be pretty fun. We dared each other to do silly things before we had met all the time. So when I saw the sign for the rest stop, which he told me was the very last one until we arrived at his house, to be silly, I dared him to take off his clothes in the bathroom, give them to me, and then streak out to the car. He thought that was absolutely hilarious and wanted to do it, so he agreed. I guess he'd done a lot of things like that with his fraternity in college, and it sort of made him feel a bit younger again. I don't have to go into the details of us setting this up, but he undressed in a stall, gave me his clothes, and I took them out to the car. I then waited for him to show up. A couple of guys actually went into the bathroom as I was leaving, so I was pretty sure he would wait for them to leave before he did the deed. I kept watching from his vehicle. The two guys who had come in were in there for an awfully long time, but after a while, they finally came out. They went over to their pickup truck and quickly drove away. I kept on waiting for Brian to come out of the rest area. It was pretty late at night and there were not many cars out on the highway that night, so no one else was stopping at the rest area. I mean, it was really weird. I got out of the car and walked toward the rest area. At first, I thought he may have chickened out and was still in the bathroom stall. I went into the bathroom and called out for Brian, but I couldn't find him anywhere in there. Confused, I kept looking throughout the entire area, trying to find him everywhere. I even checked in the woman's bathroom, thinking he might have gone in there to avoid the two big guys who had gone into the building. There was also a closet. It was unlocked and I checked it out too. And no, Brian was not there. I just couldn't find him at all. I began to get very, very concerned. Just what the hell could have happened to him? I completely searched the entire rest area, and he was nowhere to be seen. I was really scared because now I was in the middle of nowhere in a place I had never been before, and the one person I was with who knew the area was suddenly gone and not able to be found. I didn't know what to do. I was concerned as fuck for Brian too, because I wouldn't have got him naked if I didn't like him, you know? It was a nightmare, and I had no idea what to do. Disturbed and wondering if those two guys had done something to him, I decided I needed to go check on the car. As I walked out to it, I found him lying inside. He had sneaked out the other entrance and crept back to it. The two guys had actually found him naked, beat him up, and threw him into the girl's room. I think he crept out and went to the car when I was in the boys' room. I know this story has a normal ending and doesn't seem very scary, but I was absolutely terrified when it happened. About a month or two ago, my girlfriend and I went out to our favorite bar. The drive was a tad bit longer than an hour to our place from the bar, primarily on barren interstate after the first 15 minutes, save for a few rural exits and one rest stop a little over halfway home. My girlfriend was sober that night and was driving. I had had a bit to drink and was feeling quite warm and tipsy. I asked my girlfriend to make a quick stop at the rest area so I could go and have a pee. Thanks, beer. This is a normal stop for us to make if one of us had been drinking for the night, since the rest area had its own direct exit and entrance. It was faster than taking an actual exit into town for a gas station. The rest area had only one road in and out, and was surrounded by trees to the point you couldn't even see the facility from the freeway. It also had wooded walking trails along the side. By the time I hopped out of the car at the rest stop, it was sometime around 3 a.m. As mentioned, this is a fairly regular stop. Until that day, the only other person I had ever seen in that rest stop around that time of night was the guy who maintained the place. I walked in. The vending area was empty and completely silent. I made my way over to the men's room and pushed it open, only to be immediately startled by an old man, maybe in his mid-60s or so, standing immediately to the left of the door inside the bathroom. He was wearing what I can only describe as an Inspector Gadget coat and slacks. I noticed he had a cell phone in his hand as well when I opened the door, but it was hanging down at his side and the screen was not lit up at all. He stared directly at me, and I stared back for a split second. Then I got over it and passed him to head over to the urinals. I took the urinal closest to the sinks when I noticed he made no indication he was going to walk out at all. There was basically a wall of mirrors stretched out far enough that I could watch him the entire time I was at the urinal. I unzipped my pants and did my best to keep my eyes on the mirror without turning my head at all. By the time I looked into the mirror, his phone was up in his hand and on as if he were texting, but he seemed to be staring intently at me rather than the phone. Either way, he was definitely not looking at whatever was on the screen. A very long 60 seconds passed by like this. I absolutely could not piss with this silent guy staring at my back from beside the door. Then, in the mirror, I noticed him start to take small, slow steps towards me. I tried to tell myself I was just tipsy and imagining it, to get on with my piss and get the fuck out. Then he took a more obvious step forward. I put it back in my pants while I sped walked to the back handicap stall and locked the door. I went to the back where my feet weren't visible anymore and texted my girlfriend about this creepy guy inside with me. I sat and waited to hear the door open, signaling him leaving, but it still didn't. After possibly the longest 8 minutes of my life, I finally heard the door open and close. I had to wait another full 2 minutes before I could finally pee in the stall. I cracked the stall door open a bit. Luckily, the bathroom was not huge, and I had almost complete visibility of the room from the stall I had picked. I saw no signs of anyone else, so I walked out, washed my hands, and beelined it back to the parking lot. I finally made it back to the car and asked my girlfriend what car that old guy had gotten into. She turned to me with wide eyes and said, "He never got into a car. He just walked across the parking lot and went into the tree line." With the rest stop being the only thing on the very short on-off ramps and the other closest civilization being 5 miles away by interstate, I have no idea where the guy was going. Later on, I also realized although the rest area main room is small, there's a secondary entrance and exit on the side that goes to a patio backing up directly into the woods. I forgot about it because I basically never use it. If that guy had somehow managed to get the jump on me though, he could have easily pulled me out of that door, and my girlfriend would have been none the wiser. I don't know if that was his plan and I ruined it when I made my dash for the stall, but regardless, I hope I never meet that old man creeping in the rest stop bathroom in the wee hours again. What is up guys, Blue Spooky here as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have any comments or feedback on what I could do better, or you just want to talk about the stories in the video, please be sure to leave them in the comments down below. I try to read every comment that comes, and I really enjoy hearing your guys' thoughts. Before anything else, I would like to give a special thanks to my friend Killer Orange Cat who allowed me to use these stories today. You can find a link to his channel in the description below, as well as a link to the Reddit post where these stories are found. He does some great work, so if you like these stories, be sure to check him out as he has lots of ones that nobody has ever read before. If you guys want to contact me for any reason, or you would like to send a story in with a submission, please be sure to check in the description below the video. You'll find links to all of my social media, including my Gmail, Facebook, and Twitter accounts. Send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story submission, please be sure to include what the type of story it is, if it has one, the name of the story, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. Also, please be sure to format it properly and use proper grammar so it's easier to read if I actually use it in a submission for a video. Also, be sure to include as much detail as you are possibly comfortable with sharing. Overall, guys, I think that's pretty much about it for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.